Well, I think if you go back and look at my career, if I go back and think about it, there's some common themes, but certainly one theme throughout is my focus on children. Goes back, I guess, to Fran. I have 8 kids. We now have 28 grandkids. We're blessed with many children. But when I was a prosecuting attorney, first job I had, literally as an assistant prosecutor, was in juvenile court. And one of my jobs was to represent Children's Services. And so we would see the child abuse cases and just kind of some of the horrible things that occur in regard to children. And so I've always tried to really focus a lot on kids. Many times I think when public policy is made, children are not really thought that much about. And so I've always tried to look at everything through the next generation and the generation after that.
And welcome back to our next episode of Kolot. This is your host, Rabbi Hillel Kappenstein, director of the Columbus Community Kollel, and it's a great honor and privilege to bring to you our 4th season of the Kolot podcast. Kolot is the Hebrew word for voices, and we try to bring many voices on this show, diversity, unity, all within a Torah lens. And there's no better way to kick off this season with the governor of the great state of Ohio, Governor Mike Dewine. Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it very much.
So can you please tell us a little bit about your background, your childhood, and upbringing?
Well, I grew up in Yellow Springs, a little town about 4,000 south of Springfield, close to Springfield. And my family was in the seed business, small business started by my grandparents in the 1920s, and when my dad came home from World War II, he went back into the business, and I worked there as a kid, loading boxcars and loading trucks and unloading them and shoveling out grain and all the things that go with the agriculture business.
So unloading trucks, you would say, was your first job?
I think when I actually started, I was stapling tags together because I wasn't big enough to load 60-pound bags or sometimes 100-pound bags. So I just, if it's a family business, and so my grandparents were in there, my parents were in there, I had an uncle, I had a great uncle, so it was just natural for me to start working in there as a young kid, and just continued doing that really until, I guess between my second and third year at law school. My dad looked at me and he says, "It's obvious you're not going into the seed business." He says, "You probably ought to this summer spend some time and go work for a lawyer." So so that's what I did.
And what was your entry into politics?
Well, I had an interesting, as I said, I had an interesting background because my family was in a small company business, but also lived, in a pretty liberal town voting. I joke that when I started running for office, I first ran for prosecutor and I did pretty well in my hometown, but after that, I was losing about 10-1 there. So, but very liberal community, but a community that was, very focused on First Amendment. I remember that down at the post office every Saturday as I was growing up, there was one man that was always protesting. He didn't like the money being spent for the military, and civil rights movement in the 60s certainly hit Yellow Springs as well. So that's kind of the community that I grew up in. I'm Catholic, so I think the focus on social justice was also a big influence. Met my future wife in first grade. We dated in high school, and then she decided to go to Miami University, so I decided that Miami University would be a great choice for me. And so went there, and we actually got married between our second and third year at Miami. We had 2 kids by the time we left. When I went to Miami, I thought I was going to went into the school business, but decided really what I wanted to do is teach. And so I graduated. I student taught. I thought I was going to be a social studies teacher, but decided to try law school, and literally it was trying law school to see how I would do and see how well I liked it, and maybe more importantly, how well they liked me. So went to Ohio Northern, small school, small town, Ada, western part of Ohio, and I wouldn't say you enjoy law school, but I found it fascinating. I found it very, very interesting. And when I got out from law school, my first job was as an assistant county prosecuting attorney in Greene County. I'd worked for a guy by the name of Nick Carrera before, during that summer that my dad told me to go find some lawyer to work for. I worked for him, and then he was elected prosecutor. I helped him get elected, and then he hired me as an assistant county prosecutor, and I really loved it. I loved being in court. I loved working with the police. I loved riding out with the police, going to crime scenes. For a 25-year-old, it's a pretty cool job. So
Sure.
I liked it. I liked it a lot, and ultimately ended up running for county prosecutor. Was elected county prosecuting attorney, and that's really how my start in politics. How it all started, I guess.
And what was that first race like?
Well, I was running against an incumbent. It was 1976, so it was a kind of one thing you learn after many years of doing this is that some years the wind's blowing in your face, some years it's blowing at your back. That year was kind of blowing in my face because it was it was a year that Jimmy Carter was elected president, and so it was kind of a Democrat year. We elected a couple county commissioners that were Democrat, but I was a Republican, and I was able to win, and had the opportunity to serve then as the local county prosecuting attorney.
And from there?
Ran for the state senate, served for only 2 years in the state senate. I liked the job very, very much. I was honored to be there, but the incumbent congressman, a man by the name of Clarence Brown, Bud Brown, ran for governor that year. He was actually a Republican nominee, so he was going to leave Congress, wasn't going to run again, and so it opened up the seat. And so I had a chance to run, and ran against 5 other people in a primary, and then won the general election. So then I served, 8 years, 4 terms in Congress. Started running for governor then. This was 1989, but there was a guy by the name of Voinovich and a guy by the name of Taft, and they were running too. And I was kind of Mike Dewine from Yellow Springs was kind of the third guy out in that party. So that didn't go very well, but George Voinovich asked me to be his running mate as his lieutenant governor. And I decided to do that. And so then served as his lieutenant governor. Ran 1992, ran against John Glenn for U.S. Senate, lost. Came back 2 years later. It was an open seat. Howard Metzenbaum had retired. It was announced that he was going to retire. And then I was elected to the Senate, served 2 terms in the United States Senate, 12 years, was defeated then by Sherrod Brown in 2006. Came back home. Fran says, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm not really sure. And she says, we always wanted to teach. Why don't you go teach? And so I went, taught at a couple of our universities. I taught at Miami. Also at the same time, I taught at Ohio Northern and also at Cedarville University. So teaching undergraduates, political science, history. I enjoyed it. Enjoyed it a lot. But then in 2010, I ran for the Attorney General. And this really what people said, Mike, why do you want to run for Attorney General? You've been a United States Senator. Why do you want to do that? And I said, I saw how important the crime lab was when I was a local county prosecuting attorney. And one of the many things that the Attorney General does is to run the state crime lab at BCI in London. It's also one in Bowling Green, one near Cleveland. And so that was really the main reason I ran. I wanted to kind of get back into that law enforcement side. And so I was successful and then was reelected. So I served 8 years, and then of course, the last almost 6 years now as governor of Ohio. So that's the quick, or maybe not so quick, political bio anyway.
Wow. Okay, let's try to dissect that one by one. So first thing I have to ask off the bat is, what it's like to be in the public eye. And what was the question you were asked earlier? If someone asks you if they should run.
Yeah, and I said run. Yeah, run away from that.
Run away from that, right?
That might be what my wife would say. I don't know.
So the scrutiny, it's just so intense. Talk to us a little bit about what that's like.
Well, I think there's always been scrutiny. I mean, if you run for public office, that's part of the deal. When you sign up and you say, I'm going to run, people have a right to make judgments about you and look at your background, and that's just part of it. I'm not saying some of that maybe is not, it's not always easy, but I think it's what we do, and it's what you have to expect. I think the scrutiny today probably in some respects is more difficult.
Yeah.
I think things are more acrimonious sometimes in society today than they were, when I started. But if you look at the history of this country, you can go back to the founders and some of the early campaigns that were going on. Those were pretty tough and rough too. So,
and you taught about it, so
Yeah. But it's it kind of goes with the territory.
Yeah, but also what comes with the scrutiny is not just your record. If you sneeze the wrong way, if you do these silly things, and then it just becomes a headline. It's so absent of substance. Is that ever distracting to you? Is it background noise?
Well, I think it can be. It can be distracting. Thinking about being distracting during the pandemic, we had demonstrators that came to our house, and we live way out in the country in Cedarville Township, and it's kind of a somewhat remote area, and so we had a group called Mothers Against Dewine, and kind of self-named, of course, but anyway, they came out and protested on our road every Friday night from 8:30 until 11.
Wow.
And they had a boom box and turned it up, and so what Fran and I would do is get as far back as we could and turn the TV on and watch Netflix or whatever we were going to do, so we couldn't hear, or we could hear it, but so it would kind of drown that out. So I think really the difference during the time that I've been in politics is now the social media. Totally unfiltered information, some of it true, some of it not true, that is just out there about everybody.
Right.
And if you run for office, obviously you're going to have more of that. But I think it's one of the things that's really changed society. And people sometimes say things that they put on social media that maybe they wouldn't say to somebody else in person.
Right.
It's kind of a strange thing. And we've seen, what I really worry about is the influence this has on kids and
teenagers.
What this does. Look, I elected to and made a decision to run for office, and this is what I do. And if I can't take it, that's my own problem.
Right.
Do I read social media? Not usually.
No, I'm with you on that. The dangers and parenting and all that stuff, and it's
one of the challenges that we face. How we deal with this, and one of the things as we've done in Ohio is we've made a strong recommendation to the schools that they not have phones. A child goes to school, if they not have a phone, they put it someplace, put it in a locker, or put it someplace.
Yeah.
We don't compel the schools to do that. What we did have them do is come up with a policy. So every school now has to have a policy on that. And as many of them are looking at that, they've made the decision not to have these in school. I've got a granddaughter, English teacher in her second year. She kind of reports on what she sees, and she thinks it's made a big difference not having not having those phones. And I hear it from other teachers as I talk to teachers. I think most of them are very happy that by and large now we don't have the phones in the classroom.
That's great. And with all the jobs that you've had and different types of offices that you've served in, can you tell us a little bit about the differences, the similarities, some of the overlap and experiences and things that you've learned?
Yeah. Look, I've been blessed. I've had jobs that each one has been exciting and interesting. Many times I'm asked, well, what was your favorite job? And sometimes I say prosecutor, because I was 29 when I was elected, and I love trying cases. I love going into court. It was quite a challenge and exciting. So for a 29-year-old or someone just coming out of law school, I recommend it as a great place to start. Some people end up spending their whole careers in the prosecutor's office, but each one of the jobs had, I think, something different. The legislative jobs are fundamentally different than the executive branch jobs. I guess that's how I would kind of divide them. Attorney General is an executive branch job. Governor, obviously, is an executive branch job. Each one different. Each one has its own merits, I guess.
Especially different than unloading trucks, that's for sure. So my next question comes courtesy of Lieutenant Governor John Husted, who I saw him a week or two ago, and he said, "Oh, you gotta ask the governor, between all the jobs, everything you've done, what are you most proud of? What do you think perhaps made the biggest impact?"
Well, I think if you go back and look at my career, if I go back and think about it, there's some common themes, but certainly one theme throughout is my focus on children. Goes back, I guess, to Fran and I have 8 kids. We now have 28 grandkids. We're blessed with many children. But when I was a prosecuting attorney, first job I had literally as an assistant prosecutor was in juvenile court, and one of my jobs was to represent Children's Services, and so we would see the child abuse cases and just kind of some of the horrible things that occur in regard to children. And so I've always tried to really focus a lot on kids. Many times I think when public policy is made, children are not really thought that much about. And so I've always tried to look at everything through the next generation and the generation after that. Just a couple maybe examples. When I was in the state senate, a little 7-year-old boy was killed in front of his school. He was literally getting off his school bus in the morning, and guy comes around the corner in a motorcycle, been drinking already that morning, and hit him and killed this little boy. And so his grandfather made an appointment, came in to see me. I was in the state senate, and this little boy's name was Justin Beeson. I remember his name to the day. And grandfather said, I cared more about him than my own life. I loved him. It was more important than my life for anything was.
Sure.
And he says, you need to do something. So I started looking at the drunk driving laws in Ohio and found that they were really not as strong or as good as they should be. And I wrote a drunk driving bill, and we were able to get it passed. And I think it made a difference. We still have drunk driving problems, but Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, others have really helped get my bill passed, but more importantly, have helped kind of change the culture. Something that happened in the U.S. Senate. We are blessed in Ohio with some amazing children's hospitals.
Sure.
We have one obviously right here in Columbus, but we have a number of them all over the state. Some states don't have any children's hospitals. So we are really, really blessed. So one of the things that I did when I was working on legislation, I would try to stay in touch with the children's hospitals and ask them, hey, what do you need? What could we be doing? What are we messing up on? And one of the things that came back to me one time, they said, there's a lot of drugs that are being developed in this country, and they're tested for adults. They're not tested for kids. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, well, the reason is because the drug companies takes a lot of money to test these, and kids are not a very big market for some of them. And so it doesn't pay the drug companies to do it. And then we talked to pediatricians who said, look, we don't know how to, we've got this drug, it's a great drug, it works for adults, we think it works for kids, we don't know whether to use it, to not use it, or we don't know what the dosage should be. So I work with Chris Dodd, Democrat from Connecticut. He and I were both really focused on kids issues. I worked with him on a lot of different things. And we got together and we wrote a bill that basically gave the drug companies a patent term extension. They gave them some sort of the carrot, not the stick, and if they would test these for kids. And we passed a couple of different laws, and that made a big difference. There's been hundreds now of drugs that have been developed by drug companies that are now being tested for kids, and so those are available for kids. Right. Something you'd never think of. I wouldn't have thought about it.
Right.
But one of the things I've tried always to do is to go to the experts, talk to people who know about a particular area, and say, "What's the problem here? What are you seeing?" And that's what the children's hospitals did, and they told me that.
Yeah, and I find that so inspiring, especially, they're not a voting bloc, right? And they could be, forgotten so easily. So credit to you for doing that. And I know another one is school choice, and I could almost hear my friend Rabbi Yitz Frank from A Good Israel saying, make sure to talk about school choice. But tell us about how that came about. And
well, Ohio, this really started in Ohio certainly long before I became governor. And we've had a tradition in this state. It's been incremental, it's changed over the years, gotten better and better. To say, look, the parents are the first teachers, that the parents are care most about their child. We should give them some options. If they don't like their public school, or if they want their child taught in their religion,
sure.
Whatever they want, we should give them some options. And so, we've expanded that over the years, and I'm proud to say, since I became governor, working with the legislature, nothing happens without the legislature.
Sure.
We've been able to continue to expand that.
Yeah, and as a parent of 2 children in Columbus Torah Academy, definitely means a lot to us, and I'm sure the entire community, of all faiths in Ohio are very grateful to you and the entire team for all of that. Now I want to talk a little bit about Ohio, the general state leading the way on a national stage, and it was so inspiring to see how at the RNC there was so much focus of all 50 states. Ohio just had so much energy, and really it's bipartisan. I know that there are great young leaders on both ends. Our friend Howie Bagelman introduced me to Representative Amelia Sykes, just such a wonderful person. And then on the other side, of course, JD in the spotlight right now. There's also Vivek, who I told him this morning that we're doing this episode. He's like, okay, I give you permission. He's coming on the show. We don't know exactly when, but he said I could say it on the record. So how do you feel about all this? JD, Amelia, Vivek, all these young leaders in Ohio. How does it feel to you?
It's what we expect. I mean, we expect. I'm 77, so we have to look to younger generation. We have several generations, but it's always good to see somebody young who gets involved in politics and wants to change things, wants to make things better. It's kind of what we do in this country. Yeah. So we should encourage that.
And what would you like to perhaps recommend to this next generation of young leaders?
Every generation has to make its own kind of decisions about what they want to do. But I think the most important thing is maybe if someone asks me, should I get involved in politics? Should I run for office?
Yeah.
I can give a flippant answer like run away, don't do it. But the real answer is go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And but remember why you do it. I mean, the only real justification for running for office, spending the time, spending the money, all the things you have to do, the only real justification is because you want to do something.
Right.
You want to make things better.
Right.
You want to improve society. You want to leave your kids a better place than we have found it.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of basic stuff,
yeah.
But it's really the reason. And
purpose.
Trying to stay focused on what is the purpose. What are you trying to do? And look, we all take our background, we take how we were raised, we take the people we've met. All that goes to form kind of what our worldview is, or how we look at things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I think figuring out what you believe, what you think, what's important, what do you think is really important. These are very helpful, particularly if you get into a legislative situation where you're voting on maybe hundreds, sometimes thousands of different times. If you go to Congress, you're voting all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to have some core values, it seems to me, things you
Sure.
really, so that every bill isn't in a vacuum. It can't be in a vacuum. It has to be based upon, you have to look at that bill based on what you think is right and wrong, and what you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. And staying focused is such an important topic as it relates to running for office. And that leads me to my next topic about the political climate in this country. And I don't know, has it always been this way? Has it always felt this toxic? Definitely feels that way. Maybe, as we mentioned before, social media is playing a role in it. And I kind of can't help but ask myself, has politics kind of turned into tackle football? And what I mean by that is, when you play football, you signed up for this, and when the opposing team tackles you, they're not being mean. They're not necessarily, they don't hate your guts. This is part of the game, and maybe if they see you in a coffee shop during the off season, you're friends. Is that the state of our politics?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that state. I think, when the system works well, you can very much disagree with someone and have a debate on the Senate floor or the House floor or now on TV. But afterwards, trying to find some common ground, try to get some things done. It's possible that I may be put in a position to select the next U.S. Senator from Ohio. If J.D. Vance and Donald Trump win, if they win, then J.D. of course would have to resign from the U.S. Senate. And what the law says is that I would appoint his successor for basically would serve for 2 years and then would have to run again. So I've often been asked, as you can imagine, who are you going to appoint? And I said, well, we're not getting to that yet.
Right.
But,
well, without names, can you mention a few?
But people then ask, what are your criteria? And I think that's a fair question.
Sure.
And what I'm going to look for, I served 12 years in the U.S. Senate, so I think I know somewhat how the place operates.
Sure.
I want someone who wants to get stuff done. Who wants to make a difference. It's easy to spend all your time on talk TV. Nothing wrong with that. I've done it. I continue to do it. Sometimes that's how you get your position out. So there's nothing wrong with that. But you also, it seems to me, that we expect from the United States Senator someone who understands Ohio, someone who's going to be focused on Ohio, but also on the big picture of the whole country, the whole world, and someone who wants to actually make a difference. What's Congress do? It does pass laws. Maybe some laws shouldn't be passed, maybe too many sometimes, but that's what we do. It is through legislation and through the budget, we impact public policy. So I want someone who cares about policy. I want someone who cares about really making things better. And I think we still have people like that. I know we have people like that. That's what they want to do. As far as, is it more toxic today? I don't know. It's I think part of the challenge that we face in Congress and in different legislatures is that so many of the seats are not really competitive anymore. And by that I mean the competition only occurs in the primary. So if you're a Republican, Republican's going to win in the fall. So you worry about the primary. What that means is that you worry, if you're a Republican, you worry about maybe someone coming at you from the further right. If you're a Democrat, maybe you worry about someone coming at you and saying you're not liberal enough and you need to go, and they're running against you from further left. So that's not really conducive to trying to work things out. Immigration is a huge issue. We could spend 4 programs talking about immigration.
I left it out on purpose.
But I'll use it to illustrate. The last time we really had significant reform in regard to legal immigration, not illegal, but legal, Ronald Reagan was president, and I was in the U.S. House, and there was a bill worked out, Democrats and Republicans, enough Each side voted for it. Reagan and Republicans signed it. It got worked out. Was it perfect? No, it wasn't perfect, but you could pull things together.
That's democracy.
That's 40 years ago. We've not had a legal immigration bill. And the reason since then that's been very substantive or big, and I think the reason is because the whole fight over illegal immigration has just caused it to be very polarizing and not able to make a kind of an essential decision. Because when you talk about legal immigration, what are you talking about? You're talking about who we as a country decide should come in. Legitimate debate, and
Sure.
reasonable people can have different points of view.
Yeah.
But that's a debate worth having. And that's a debate that unfortunately we have not been able to have, and not been able to kind of make compromises and pull together because of the polarization and the fights that have been going on in regard to the illegal immigration problem. So my hope for the future and for young people is that they find a way to not give up their principles. That's not what we're talking about, but figure out how they advance forward. I was on a committee on job training, and the leading Democrat was the late Paul Wellstone. And Paul and I didn't agree on very much at all, but we both agreed that we could improve the then current law. And we ended up getting a bill. And we both thought that it was better than the bill we had before. Was it what I wanted? No. Was it what he wanted? No. But was it better than the status quo? And we thought that it was.
And you moved the needle.
And we moved some. We think we did.
Yeah.
We thought we did. And Paul and I didn't agree on a lot of things, but we did agree on, hey, we can make this better. Let's figure out what we can agree on, how we can do that. I found in the Senate, a lot of people say, didn't the Senate frustrate you? And and weren't you glad to get out of there? And the answer is no. I left involuntarily. Sherrod Brown beat me, so I wasn't looking to get out of there. But I found, 12 years I was there, that whatever issue I was really interested in, I could find somebody on the other side of the aisle who had an interest in the issue. And for example, as I said, Chris Dodd and I had great interest in children's health issues. Jay Rockefeller and I worked on foster care. We worked on highway safety. I worked on, I was very interested, this is the time when AIDS was a huge problem, and then a real problem worldwide. And so I worked Democrats on the other side of the aisle. Dick Durbin, for example, on that. Dick and I didn't agree on much, but we could agree on, let's go see how we can make things better in this particular area. So I always found I could find somebody. Did I get everything I want to know? Did I pass every bill I want to know? But that's not the way the system works.
Sure.
But if you can make a difference, then you should, wouldn't say you should be satisfied with that, but that's what you're there for, is to try and make a difference.
And as we record this, we are approaching the 1-year anniversary since October 7th, and I learned literally as we were going in this room all the rockets that are coming from Iran.
I saw that.
And it just reminds us, brings to surface what this year has been like. And of course, the rise of anti-Semitism. From your standpoint, can you share a little bit of how do you see this whole situation? How do we make things better? Students on college campus, how do we keep them safer? Communities, synagogues, and all places of faith and worship, how do we make them stronger, safer, and more resilient?
That's a huge problem. And unfortunately, in the last year, we've seen more anti-Semitism. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We've seen more of it in Ohio. You see this kind of play out in some of our college campuses. I've worked with our college presidents, particularly our 14 public, and we believe in the First Amendment. We believe people have the right to express their views, but they don't have the right, for example, to violate the college's rules.
Right.
There's ways that they can do that, but the toleration. People have a right to go see what they want to, but anti-Semitism, you don't need to tolerate that on a college campus.
Right.
I mean, should not be tolerated. We cannot tolerate that at all. I think it's just important that public officials speak out about it.
Right.
I think it's also important, and that maybe this is more kind of organic or maybe more basic, but I think it's important for us. I told you I wanted to be a social studies teacher. We have to teach about the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
This has to be part of what kids learn in school.
Mm-hmm.
They have to learn about horrible, horrible things like that, so that they know that actually happened. We have some deniers, as you know.
Yeah.
So part of that's an obligation of parents. I think part of it's an obligation that we need to do this through our schools as well. My dad served in World War II. He got to Dachau. Dachau was liberated. We never could quite figure out what day it was after it was liberated, but very close to when it was liberated. And I can remember just as a kid him talking about what he saw, and he saw the gas chambers. He saw the whole thing,
mm-hmm.
and bodies were still there.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so again, as we get further and further away in time from that period in the 40s, we have to make more of an effort to
double down on it,
to explain
Yeah.
to the next generation what this was all about, and the unbelievable horror of it.
Mm-hmm. And perhaps as a final question, looking into the horizon about Ohio, what are you most excited about?
Ohio's on the move. Ohio's red hot. John Houston and I, just this morning, we were over in Dayton. We have a company over there, Sierra Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
Not the beer, but Sierra Nevada, a company that what they do, they built a facility right by the airport, and they're working with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They're redoing planes in a very, very extremely sophisticated manner. We just continue to see companies come to Ohio. They come to Ohio because the cost of living is decent. They come to Ohio because our tax laws are predictable,
Sure.
and we've had a steady decreasing the taxes, and that's very, very stable. People know what they're getting into. We have great universities in Ohio.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're always asked when we're talking to a company and trying to get them to come to Ohio instead of go to some other state,
Yeah.
How many PhDs in chemistry do you produce in Ohio? How many of this? How many of that? Are we going to have the workforce that we need? And of course, every company is different. Every company
Sure.
has different needs. But 14, very significant public universities, over 50 private universities in the state.
Wow.
We are a net importer of students in Ohio. In other words, more kids from other states come to Ohio than our kids go to other states. So we have a lot of good things going for us, and it frankly is a very exciting time. Our biggest challenge is to making sure that every Ohioan, and I like to talk about kids, every child grows up and is able to maximize their potential.
Sure.
Whatever dream that they have the opportunity to work on that dream. And so we have to give them the education. We have to make that education available for them. We have to start early. One of the things my wife Fran is working on is the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Free book in the mail to kid from the time of birth until age 5. We now have 61% of the kids in Ohio signed up for that.
Wow.
And again, thanks to the legislature, but also help to people in each county. People in each county raise half the money, and the legislature puts the other half in.
Wow.
It's something else that we're doing, and I know you're getting ready to conclude, but the other thing we're doing is we're focusing really on what's called the science of reading. It's sounding words out. It's then kind of putting the words together. It's kind of basic. And we got away from that. Many schools got away from that for 20, 25 years. Now we know the science. This is solid evidence that every child, whether the child is dyslexic, whether the child, whatever challenges the child might have, kids all learn sort of the same way, or they do learn the same way. And so being able to sound those words out is really essential. So everything flows from reading. If you can't read, you're not going to do good. Do well in math. You're not going to do well in social studies. You're not going to do well in science. And so we put a real focus on that. But it comes back to, we want every child to be able to live up to their full potential. That's good for that child. It's good for that family. It's also good for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Everybody has the chance to be there for their expectations and live their own dream.
Right, and all the job opportunities that are going to be waiting for them.
Jobs we're creating jobs today in Ohio faster than we have people fill them.
Intel, and I know you visited my friend American Night Trial with Jacob Block, so so much exciting things going on here. Governor, this was a real privilege to have
Enjoyed
you.
it. Yeah, thank you.
And,
thank you very much.
On behalf of myself, everyone, really, your leadership here in Buckeye Nation has been tremendous, and such a long, fulfilling career you've had. Really, thank you for everything, and can't wait to see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To listen to all Kolot episodes and see upcoming guests, visit kolotpodcast.com. We are also on all podcast players. Type in Kolot on iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, and Amazon. Share with your friends, and please make sure to give us a 5-star review. Kolot is a project of the Columbus Community Kollel, a full-time Jewish learning center in Bexley, staffed with high-caliber Torah scholars. Ever since 1995, boys, girls, men, and women from all backgrounds and affiliations have found many opportunities to connect with Torah and mitzvos at the Kollel. Whether it's a study partner, an engaging lesson, or a program, the Kollel is your one-stop shop for all your Jewish learning. If you want to know how you can benefit from the Kollel, visit thekollel.org. That is TheKollel.org, and forever be inspired.